We'll let them come on in.
Right. And I think we are live. Oh, almost. We are live.
Are you recording too? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. We are very excited to have everyone join us today and get informed about how to find dolphins and whales here in Dana Point, the dolphin and whale watching capital of the world. I'd love to go through and introduce who we've got here with us today. We have Captain Todd Manser from Dana Wharf Sport Fishing and Whale Watching, who has been on the water for a number of years. Between you and Captain Peter Highstand, who is representing the Ocean Institute, and Captain Dave Anderson, who is with Captain Dave's Dolphin and Whale Watching Safari, I think we can safely say we have 100 years of whale watching experience in the room.
And maybe then some.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also have Donna Calez, who is my partner here in the Dolphin and Whale Watching Capital at Dana Point Whale Watching. And we are co-directors of the Dana Point Whale Watching Company. We are committed to promoting Dana Point as the dolphin and whale watching capital of the world and a whale heritage site, and to doing things that make it a great place to come and watch whales, and for whales to come and hang out with people. So welcome. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat, and Donna will be keeping an eye on that. And we're going to get going with our whale watching success and safety. So we have this beautiful humpback whale here in front of the Ritz-Carlton right here in Dana Point. And I wanted to just point out that dolphin and whale capital of the world was trademarked by Donna and I in 2019. And we are really blessed to have that designation, but we have an even more special designation. Donna, you want to tell us about that?
Yes. So in January 2021, we were honored with becoming a whale heritage site. It was a very long process for both Giselle and I as co-directors of the Dana Point Dolphin and Whale Watching Capital of the World. Once we received the designation, we were thrilled. But I want to explain to everybody what a whale heritage site is. So it's on the screen, but a whale heritage site is an outstanding location where cetaceans, whales, and dolphins are embraced through the cultural, economic, social, and political lives of associated communities, and where people and cetaceans coexist in an authentic and respectful way. And right there, that is so Dana Point. Both Giselle and I recognized it right away that we had the most magical place on earth to have the first ever in the Americas whale heritage site. So we are honored, and as part of our goal, we always want to educate the public on safe ways to watch whales and dolphins. And so this is one of our things that we do. So thank you all for being here. Thanks, Todd and Peter and Captain Dave, and of course, my co-director, Giselle.
Awesome. All right, well, let's talk quickly about one of the initiatives to be a whale heritage site. You don't get the award and then just sit there and do nothing. Every year we are audited and encouraged to set goals, and then our goals are reviewed. And one of the goals that I think Donna and I are very proud of is this initiative to really encourage and educate people regarding the use of balloons, especially helium balloons, and to not let them go. If you're going to have balloons, which are just plastic, and when you put them in the air, they are going to come down. They do end up in the ocean. And last year, Dana Wharf Sport Fishing and Whale Watching and Captain Dave's, we picked up over 1,500 balloons out of the water, which was quite the cool thing. I know that we pretty much do it on almost every trip. And, you know, we could probably do it more than once a trip, but there's a lot going on out there, and people don't come out just so they can go pick up balloons. They come out so they can go go see dolphins and whales. But you can see in the picture with this lovely young lady and the hook in her hand that the ink comes off the balloons, and then it ends up resembling a jellyfish. And we have some whales and dolphins in the area that feed on them, sea turtles, etc. So they feed on jellyfish. So it becomes very hazardous, as well as the string that gets, that holds the balloon, that can get wrapped around props and around birds' feet and necks and things like that. So we don't want that. And so we are definitely big on the balloons blow, don't let them go, educational initiative.
And all balloons. So it's not just Mylar balloons, it's also our latex balloons and those big bouquets of balloons. So we're really trying to educate, and we want to remind all boaters that if you can stop and pick up a balloon and just share what it means with your guests on your boat, it really helps us and push our initiative.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I think if you let a balloon go, you might as well just it's just the same as if you took a balloon, popped it, and tossed it into the ocean. It's no different, because that's where it's going to end up if you live in this area. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about letting one go. It might seem like fun, but it's no different than littering into the ocean.
Yeah. And none of us would ever do that. None of us would ever roll our windows down and throw plastic out the windows. So it really isn't any different. All right, so now let's jump into the safely watching dolphins and whales. And
Hey, Giselle.
Yes.
Giselle.
Yes.
So I got a text that they can't get in. So to the Zoom.
Okay.
There are people that are still in.
Shouldn't they be? They don't want to come in on the Zoom. They want to come in on the live feed on
the
YouTube.
Right, and that's where I'm getting the message from. So people are waiting. It says 11 waiting.
They're not able to see.
That's what it says right now. It says that they're just still in the waiting room.
17 waiting. That's so weird.
19 waiting.
It says live on YouTube. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
Hold on.
It just says upcoming.
What website is it on, or YouTube site? I mean,
it's on the Dana Point Whale Watching YouTube channel.
It says I'm live streaming. Copy. It says I'm live streaming to YouTube.
Tell them to reset. Sometimes they have to reset their computers or whatever.
Okay.
Reboot it.
All right.
Are you seeing it, Donna?
No. So it says waiting for Dana Point Whale Watching.
I see it.
Does yours say? It says upcoming? It says waiting. It's on the Dana Point Whale Watching YouTube channel.
I see it, guys.
Okay. Copy. It says I'm live streaming to YouTube.
I see it.
Tell them to reset. Sometimes they have to reset their computers or whatever.
Okay.
Reboot it.
Well,
Are you seeing it, Donna?
I'm seeing it.
No. Okay.
So if I went to the in the upper left,
waiting for Dana Point Whale Watching.
I see it. Go ahead, Peter. What did you do?
So it says upcoming. It says waiting. It's on the Dana. Maybe just drop your link in the chat. I mean, I just had. Let's see. No, it says it's waiting.
I see it. Yeah, I do too.
Well, we can keep going and we can share it. I don't.
I went to the upper left corner of my screen where it says live YouTube, and I clicked the little down button thing there, and I got it. So I'm seeing it on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes, and there's 9 people watching us figure this out.
Okay.
So, hey, hi, thanks for being on the back end of this. I don't know why some people are having trouble getting in, and I'm sorry about that.
We will share it. So we will share it later.
Yes.
So
all
we
right.
won't miss anything. So let's keep going.
Okay, so the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Let's talk about that. Peter, tell us about the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
So the Marine Mammal Protection Act is a federal law that was put into place several decades ago. And the main purpose of it is people realized that the average person didn't know how to manage themselves around these mammals without interfering with them. And so what the Marine Mammal Protection Act says is that while we're enjoying looking at these beautiful creatures out there, we need to give them some slack and not interfere with them. So when they're particularly migrating and going someplace, we can follow behind them at a safe distance, and not get in front of them and not cut them off or not try and figure out where they're going to come up and sit on top of them. There are also a lot of local, regional versions of it, which talk about how close or how far you can come to one of these animals. But that's really not part of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. They're relying on us to use our intelligence to respect these creatures and not do anything to interfere with them. And, you know, not only the distance and not getting in front of them, but also has to do, they're so sensitive to sound, and that's how their world is. That's how they navigate. And if you come in there with any kind of vessel at a high rate of speed and then drop your engines back down and then rev them back up again, that kind of sound is kind of like fire engines to us in a city. It drives them crazy. So the Marine Mammal Protection Act it covers all of those different things so that we kind of stay out of their way, but get near enough to them that we can enjoy them, but not not interfere.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, it also, the Marine Mammal Protection Act really wanted to protect these animals from any type of hunting, harvesting, harming, and you know, obviously include interfering or harassing. So there was a lot of reasons for the Marine Mammal Protection Act protecting these animals along our coast, as well as the Canadian coast. The Mexican coast allowed our populations to increase, allowing us to have better options to see these animals again thriving in our waters. And so if we look at the Marine Mammal Protection Act for what it really was a way to save these animals from further harm, more than just harassment, but the take and the harming and the killing of these animals was why the Marine Mammal Protection Act came into play. And it protects not only our whales and dolphins, but our pinnipeds as well, sea lions, seals, otters, they're all included.
Awesome. Yep. And some of these species are coming back. So we're doing some things right. So that's
Absolutely.
Great. Yep. Okay. So there is this whale safe, kind of a quick and easy way to remember things. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So, you know, I think all of us have kind of inherited this saying that we should always view our whales as a fire truck or an ambulance driving down the road. And if we observe them that way, first and foremost, if we look at them as a fire truck or an ambulance going down the road with the sirens on, then we immediately know that we're not going to cut off the fire engine or the paramedics. We're not going to get in the way or block them. We're not going to deter them. We're going to give them safe passage so they can get to their destination. So that in mind is really important for people to understand when they see these animals. And you know, we see this all the time. Different animals, different whales, gray whales, humpback whales, fin whales, blue whales, tend to be found in certain times of the year in certain geographical locations. So with our gray whales, oftentimes when we see our biggest influx of boaters not appreciating the animal and approaching the wrong way is pretty close to our harbors and our coast and our beaches. And if you were to just take a look at what's in front of you, most boaters could understand if there's 3 boats, 2 boats, 1 boat traveling at 4 knots, 3.5 knots, that they might be following a whale, and that the direction of those boats is the direction that whale is going. And the best thing to do is to give a wide berth, go to the outside. I like to tell boaters that, especially for gray whales, which loves shallow water and kelp forest for security to get away from natural predators, to try to give them a wide berth to the outside, to the open ocean. And then if you're going to follow that whale, to come back around and get set up behind that whale. But I also like to mention to people that if they're alone with that whale, and this will make you look like an experienced whale watcher, is to not just start driving up right behind the whale, to stay off to the side, giving the whale an exit. You know, when predators are tracking prey, they track from directly behind or from underneath. And if we're off the sides, we're not as much of a threat. We tend to be a little bit more appreciated, and the behaviors tend to be more natural for these animals when we give them a little bit of space to be able to make a decision to turn to a certain direction away from us if they wish to do so. And then distance is a huge thing. You had a picture up earlier that I really liked, and this is a guy on the bow of a boat, and he's obviously waiting to take a picture of this animal. He's right up on top of it, and he's approaching this animal. So there we go. So, and you can tell that this animal was a little spooked. They're getting a little bit too close. You can see how fast the wake is on the bow of his boat. He's actually moving. And this is something that's not appreciated by anybody. When we're approaching these animals like this, all we're doing is spooking them. All we're doing is making them afraid of the situation. And yeah, some whales might, have gotten used to it. Maybe they behave a little bit better, but the slower you can approach and the further you can stay back to get a better perspective, the better the behavior of the whale the entire time you watch them. I mean, Dave, how many times have we been following whales that were showing flukes really well, and we get somebody that comes up erratically, and now we've got a snorkeler? So, and without getting too into the behaviors of whales, but the behaviors do change, and we can see those changes when the approaches are improper. So trying to stay back far enough to where that whale can feel safe. If there's a lot of boats around, sometimes I even, if there's a lot of boats and there hasn't been much to see, and you just want to get, a look, get into a position where you're not harming that whale, maybe stay back for a little bit, because people that follow whales, even whale watching boats, don't stay with them forever. And so if you just give yourself some time, a few of the boats are going to leave. And then you can safely approach and get into a spot to where you can get a better view. If you're already in a hurry and you really just want to get up there and get a better look at that whale, it doesn't help anybody. It certainly doesn't help the whale. This humpback whale that's up here right now clearly has been struck by a boat. Those are propeller scars. Those are marks from a boat strike on this humpback whale. We saw this whale yesterday, and at first glimpse, I thought that maybe there was some rakes from an orca. But as I zoomed in on the photographs that I took, and I didn't take these pictures, these are wonderful. It was still real cloudy out when I took my pictures of this humpback. Once I was able to zoom in, I could tell that this whale had been struck by a boat. And judging by how fast those propeller marks are, that was a boat moving quite rapidly. So if that were a big ship moving at a slow speed, we would just have probably a demised whale. So this is a whale that was approached by a rapidly traveling boat, and it possibly could have been avoided, not knowing the situation.
Todd, can I just comment a little bit there? What I think the easiest thing to do when you pull up, when you come up to a whale that somebody's following, your best bet to do, the simplest thing, and I'll see if Todd agrees with me, is simply go towards the outside and behind whatever boats are there. Whatever the last boat is in line, you get behind that boat. And that way you're not blocking anybody, and you're not going to cause any problems. That
is exactly what I was trying to say. Take a wide berth, get back behind everybody, and stay to the outside of that last boat, because you're going to get your chance. We don't stay on whales all day. And if you're the last boat there, well, give the guys a chance that maybe spotted that whale first, or maybe waited to get a better look at that whale. And then we see better behaviors. That's a great point, Dave.
Yeah, if you just, kind of take your spot in line, so to speak, and then be patient, like Todd's saying, you're eventually going to get a great look at this whale, because one by one, the boats will take off, and then you can move a little closer if you know what you're doing. If you're not sure what's happening, another good reason to stay to the side is that not just because the whale likes it, but also you're less likely to run him over. Because if you underestimate the whale's speed or overestimate it, you might actually run him over, and so if you're off to the side, then you're not going to hit it. So, or less likely, I should say.
And I'd like to point out something else too. If you're watching this, then you're trying to be a better steward in our oceans and to our animals. So at least understand the time of year that you're whale watching. If you're whale watching between December and the middle of January and you're looking for gray whales, it's likely that your gray whales are southbound. You might occasionally have a juvenile that's turned back and gone up, or even an adult, but it's going to be primarily southbound. As we start to get further into the season, you're going to see a transition of whales going both directions, like we're seeing right now in February and the beginning of March. And then as we get into the later part of the season, we know that our gray whales are going to be going more northbound. And so by kind of understanding where you are and what type of whale and what that whale might be doing is going to help you a lot with understanding how to approach these whales. Our blue whales are, typically here for other reasons. They're not just migrating through, even though we see a lot of traveling whales. But, the situations that we can avoid when we're going to get too close in proximity to these whales sometimes can just be avoided by understanding what time of year it is, what type of animal you might be seeing.
Yep, that's a great point, Todd. And I want to encourage anyone who is watching this, both Dane Wharf Sport Fishing and Whale Watching and Captain Dave's have sightings logs. So you can go to those logs any day. We update them daily, and you can see what's going on out there. And although we don't necessarily put the direction that we're seeing them in, we are putting, hey, we're seeing mothers and calves, we're seeing, this kind of behavior, we're seeing this kind of a whale. So if you really want to, just bookmark that, and then you can, or follow us on Facebook, or Instagram, follow either of the companies, and you'll be able to see what we are observing out there. Thank you.
And then go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's very common for people to come out and follow us around. And, what I would say about that is that rather than just following us, it would be really helpful to us if you would give us a call on channel 11 and let us know, hey, I'm the boat off to your side. Where would you like me to look? Can I help you guys look for something? And you might have a faster boat than us, or you might be able to cover an area, like maybe if we're, for example, if we're looking for gray whales and we're heading down the coast at this time, we might send you out a half mile outside of us, and then you can just run down the coast and look for stuff. Rather, don't assume that we're going to be mean to you and we're not going to want your help. I mean, some guys out there, aren't super friendly on the radio, but most of us are. I know
Sure.
Todd is, and Peter is, and I am. We're
Absolutely. I want everybody to get this great experience and to help protect these animals. And you're exactly right. Networking is actually one of our strongest tools in finding our animals out there. The networking tool is huge. Communication with each other is vital, and I think more and more private boaters are queuing into that. They're starting to figure out that, hey, I can communicate with these guys, and it's actually, I think it kind of gives them a warm feeling, fuzzy feeling too, when they call us with a sighting that helps make our day. And we, by all means, we want everybody to enjoy these animals. But I want to point out something real quick before we move on to the next subject. We've got a picture up here of a jet ski, or I should say a wave runner. I don't think there's really many jet skis around anymore. But this guy on a wave runner here. If you're out whale watching on a wave runner, if you're watching this, and I doubt wave runners, or, people out on those types of vessels are going to be watching this, but if you are, and you're out there whale watching on your wave runner, act like you're on a boat. Just because we're staying back doesn't mean we're not fast enough to get up forward. We're staying back for a reason. And we often see that the wave runners with, like Peter pointed out before, they're high RPM, they sound different, they're more annoying to the animals. You have to act like you're on a boat. You have to get back just like we are. You're not that high off the water. It's not a whale watching vessel. If you're out on that wave runner, you're out to go have a good time and utilize that piece of equipment to, for what it's worth. It's not a whale watching vessel. So if you do approach a whale, approach it as if you were on a boat. Stay behind outside. Don't go running off in front of their faces like this one right here. This is clearly in front of this humpback whale, which this humpback whale right here is already having problems. It's floated with whale ice. It's slightly emaciated. And here we've got a jet skier that's driving out in front of it.
Oh, thank you.
And the subject of the communications, I just like to think that out there, we're all in the same boat. So we should all be respecting each other and helping each other, just like the other guys are saying.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys will agree with me that it's kind of annoying when somebody follows you literally like right next to you the entire trip. And I had this happen one time, and this guy followed me everywhere I went. I turn right, he goes right. I turn left, he goes left. Like a barnacle following me. And so I finally got up to the whale, and I got on my loudspeaker and I hollered out to him. I said, "Hey, I need to get your credit card number," because basically our trip was, you're basically riding along my boat. And it turned out he was my next door neighbor. And it was the last time I ever smarted off to anybody on the radio after that.
So that's a great point. So when I was younger, and I was pretty vocal when I was younger. If I had a family that made a bad decision on how their boat handling was around me, I was quick to just start yelling at them on the PA system. And I've learned over time that all I've actually done is made an enemy on the water. I've embarrassed him in front of his wife and his family and his kids. And the best approach, if it has to be spoken, is a friendly approach. And then if they don't listen, then they don't listen. But I've learned not to yell. I'm real courteous. I'll even tell them what radio channel we're on so we can talk on the radio. But I stopped getting angry at people for their bad behavior around the whales.
Me too. But the thing my point was that if you want to irritate us, then just follow us around real close, because that we don't like that. But if you want to help us, if you want to be helpful, then you can accomplish the same thing by staying within sight of us.
Yeah.
In running maybe a parallel course, but looking out for yourself to see what you can find, and then letting us know if you find something that we love. That's very helpful.
I want to address.
You can be a Klingon. You can be a Klingon or a Scout.
Right on.
I do want to address being on a wave runner, also being on a kayak. These are very low profile vessels, right? So you really can't see the whole body coming up out of the water like you can when you're on a larger boat. You're, 8, 10, 20 feet off the water. You can see the shadow coming up. So you really are at a disadvantage here because you aren't going to get the kind of forewarning that a larger boat has. Am I correct, you guys? So you really should be going even slower. You might think, well, I'm nimble, I'm fast, I can do this, but not necessarily. So who wants to tell kayakers or paddleboarders a tip for how to avoid this kind of a situation?
So I feel like I've talked a lot, but Peter, do you want to talk about it? I've been taking up a lot of airtime here. I could clearly talk about it, but I think we all know what needs to be said. So Peter?
Well, I can give you a little incident that happened. Actually, it just because we're doing this tonight, I'd totally forgotten about it. But probably 10 years or so ago, on our boat, which is a twin engine, large boat. We were up off Laguna, and there was a blue whale up there that had been feeding, and he was circling around. And the closer he got, I figured, well, let's try and make him comfortable. So I shut my engines down. I still had a generator going. And this whale circled the boat, and it actually went under the boat, and we were having a really great time. Everybody was all excited. So I said, well, I want to really see what happens here. If this is making the whale so happy, I'll turn the generator off and we'll not have any noise. So I turned the generator off, and the whale went away because I became invisible to the whale. The whale, when you think about, if you ever go snorkeling and you look and you can see maybe 10 or 20 feet if you're lucky in front of you, whales have eyes, but their sight is not nearly as good. Their sight is actually their sound. It's kind of like sonar. So if you're in a little kayak like this, the sound of your engine is your oar or paddle dipping into the water. And that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of noise. So these mammals have no idea that you're there. And you got to watch out. That's like somebody running a red light, that you don't get broadsided by one of these things. Yeah. So just be very careful. Don't be aggressive about getting too close. Respect them, keep your distance, and you have a greater chance of making it back safely.
And Peter, they don't have sonar. They don't have sonar like the dolphins do. So unless it's a sperm whale. So they have a primitive form of sonar, but it's not, doesn't work very well. So you really need to make sound.
And
yeah, I've had kayakers and paddleboarders tell me that it works really well to slap on their hull and even slap the water. When we're in the lagoons, and we've all been in the lagoons, we know that we get, we shut down the pongas in the park area. We're going to look for friendlies, and when we see a mother and a calf, we start splashing the water. They hear really well. They're really good at judging depth perception from sound. They don't have a typical echolocation like our toothed whales, but they're really good at judging depth perception from sounds, which is how they navigate in and out of tight quarters like the lagoon entries, the bocas, and even around our Dana Point headlands or whales that come into our harbor. It's all about sound. So by slapping the side of the boat where you can actually get a good tone is I've talked to a lot of kayakers, has worked really well for them to let the whales know that that they're there, and then you don't end up with an incident like this is about to happen here. That looks scary.
Well, I was going to say, this is kind of also a plug. The person on the back of this, his name's Tom Mustill. He just wrote a book called How to Speak Whale. And I interviewed him for the series that we did for the Festival of Whales. It'll be airing this weekend. And he talks about this experience in the interview. And he survived. The whale came up and kind of went, oh no, I got a kayak under me, and kind of turned, but it did hit the front of the boat and caused some damage to it. And they both ended up in the water, but they both survived. So we don't want that. We don't want that here in Dana Point. All right. So now that you've stuck with us this long and heard about all of the things that we'd love to see done so that you can safely interact with dolphins and whales, now we want to give you the gold nuggets you came for. And so I've asked the captains to give us their best tips for finding dolphins and whales. You pull out of the harbor, you look around, and there's no whale watching boats, and you're by yourself, which is the coolest feeling ever. You just see horizon as far as you can see. What do I do, guys? Todd, can you give me your best tip? What do you do?
Well, so seeing nothing on the horizon for miles and miles, is that what you said? Yeah,
you just pulled out. There's nobody out there. What do you do?
What here's the thing. Okay, if I'm going to leave, let's just say it's the middle of summer. You've got boats everywhere, but you know that everybody's really out just enjoying the sun and the weather and maybe fishing, and you want to go find some whales and some dolphins. So in the summertime, we're primarily going to see our whales and our dolphins along the continental shelf or just outside of it. That's going to be a great start. So understanding the topography of your ocean bottom, having a halfway decent chart. There's some great apps, by the way. Navionics has a wonderful app that you can download on your smartphone. And I mean, it is an absolute great chart plotter. So, you know, even if you don't have a fathometer in your boat, that you're getting off that continental shelf. So our continental shelf in Southern California here, approximately 3 miles offshore. It's why we, you know, we banned our gill nets outside to 3 miles or 100 fathoms. That was kind of the mark there. And so at that depth, we start to see, as the water drops off, we start to see a lot of upwelling. And we typically see a lot of our feeding animals, like our dolphins, our blue whales, our fin whales, our minke whales, and our humpback whales around those types of ecosystems, shelves, seamounts. And so if I were leaving in the summer, I would want to, you know, head, you know, kind of out to that continental shelf about 3 miles out, and then, you know, maybe decide turning right or left. And if I had a few minutes to look through a pair of binoculars, I'd be looking for some bird life, especially in the summertime, because our bait fish are typically going to be, you know, fed on by dolphins and even some of our whales. So the birds are going to be a key factor to helping you make the decision of whether or not you're going to go right or left when you get to that point, or maybe you might see them further out. Now, if I was going whale watching like today, you know, in the wintertime, understanding where the animals are coming from that are migrating up and down our coast that I want to see, in particular the gray whale. So right now, if I were to leave, and I've got we had a blank canvas yesterday when we left the morning. I had 51 students on board, and we leave the harbor, and, you know, we could do a coin toss, but we know that right now we're seeing more northbound whales. So by shortening the distance to a northbound whale, rather than trying to find one from chasing it behind, we decided to make a left turn coming out of the harbor. So we start heading south to look for whales that are heading north. Now, keep in mind that you may be heading right at a gray whale. So, you know, really focus on what's in front of you, taking into consideration that these whales are going to be coming your direction. If you do see a vapor plume, make sure to get outside of it so that whale can make safe passage from a distance, not 30 feet away. Give yourself a wide berth, wait for that whale to surface and give you an opportunity to get into that proper safe, you know, 100-yard position behind the animal so that we can start following it. Now, this time of year, we see a lot of forage. We have a lot of anchovies. We have a lot of sardine. In our colder months, we see a lot of bait fish, which is why we see a lot of megapods and a lot of superpods of dolphins along our coastline this time of year, because as we get into the colder waters, higher nutrient levels, and the sustainability of especially anchovy in colder water is better than warmer water. So it's very common to see a variety of different tooth whales, bottlenose dolphin, common dolphin, and even our white-sided dolphins, you know, pretty close proximity.
Those are great. So we're looking at the shelf, we're looking for directions, we're looking for birds. Captain Dave, what else do you look for? What other tips do you have?
You know, it all depends on what time of year. I guess if you're looking for dolphins, for example, then as Todd was saying, you're going to want to look for areas where there's birds circling. If you see a lot of bird activity, that's a good area to head towards. If you see any splashes in the water, that's another thing to look for. If you you know, the dolphins can often be seen, you know, 5 miles away just from a splash. And so if you see a splash in an area where there's no waves that day, then you know that something jumped out of the water. So you might want to head that way. Of course, you're looking for, you know, a puff of smoke in the water, circling around. You know, everybody has their own kind of style for looking for the whales and dolphins, but I like to get out into an area where I've been seeing a lot of them, and then stop for a while and kind of look around, and then maybe move a mile or so down the line, and then look again. And I think it's a really, you know, generally speaking, we're almost always going to go up or down the coast rather than out. I mean, out typically is for when if you're going to be looking in an area where you've where you know something was typically, then you might go straight out because you know that there's been something seen out there. But otherwise, like Todd says, we're going to go about 3 miles out, get to where the canyon is, and then kind of head down and or up, depending on the where you feel lucky. And I always my little tip is say your prayers.
That's
Ask
great.
God to lead
Yeah.
you. And I remember a funny story. One time I was looking for dolphins, and we had been traveling up the coast for a good 45 minutes and hadn't seen a thing. And I said a little prayer, and I asked the Lord to guide me. And I just felt like, you know what? I need to turn around right now. So I turned around, and sure enough, about I don't know how far it was, but it was just out of my line of sight, maybe 3-4 miles back behind me. There was a huge pod of dolphins that was tracking me. It was just following me right up the coast. So
I love
I
it.
never would have seen it if I hadn't just gone the other way. But once you choose a direction, you kind of just keep going that way, because otherwise you're just backtracking on what you've already done.
What
So-
about you, Captain Peter?
Well, pretty much the same. This time of year with the gray whale migration, we have just like people. There are some people that are early birds, and some people are night owls. So we have whales headed down from Alaska to Mexico, starting in probably December sometime, and those are the early ones. And the stragglers right now, which are kind of like me, up until midnight. You see the last of them going down about the middle of February. And at the same time, you will see the early birds that made it all the way down to Mexico and are tired of margaritas and everything, want to get back up to Alaska. you start seeing them going back up.
Right.
I look at for me, I like associations to remember things. So I think of Valentine's Day as the midpoint in the season, and that's about when you see the last of the southbound and the beginning of the northbound. The other thing I find interesting is when they're coming back north, a lot of the moms have got the little babies with them, what we call a cow and a calf. And well, there's always exceptions to every rule. I think most of them tend to stay closer to shore. So I'll see them coming in shallower than when the whales are all headed down earlier in the season. And some of the adults will be further offshore going up. But if you really want to see something interesting, it's a mom with a little calf going up the coast. We had one about a week or two ago that we just saw a birth about a mile offshore, I think it was. It was pretty close. And I had just come back in from a trip and had to watch that on the 7 o'clock news, because I wasn't still out there. But you guys were out there, and I think you saw it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was
that's
so
awesome.
jealous. Donna called me right when it was happening.
Donna called everybody right when it was
I was so
happening. She's
jealous.
like, she's got 5 phone lines.
First thing I
Boom,
said
boom,
is, this
boom,
never
boom,
been recorded here. That's the first one ever.
Yep. Well, I didn't hear anyone say this, so I just want to quickly share. During COVID, I started going out by myself, just because I was like, I'm going to go crazy, and so no one was out there to help me. And I, one of the things that I would look for is this little thing. You see this reflection. It's kind of like someone signaling you.
Yeah.
With
the
a
glare.
mirror. And
Yeah.
it's very different from just the way that a wave looks, and from a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. Sometimes if you're just looking, you'll see it. And it's like, what was that? And I know it's not someone with a mirror. So I'm going to start moving in that direction. And then if I see it again, sometimes it's dolphins, sometimes it's a whale. I'm looking for a blow. Or splashes. If I see sometimes, a very enthusiastic pelican messes with my head, but sometimes, there's dolphin below the feeding pelicans. So that reflection has always been helpful. Another thing that on a day like this picture here is if I see one spot that's got a lot of white water in it compared to the rest, that tells me there might be some activity going on there, or maybe it's different color or something like that. And I'll go check that out. But you guys are the pros. I'm just a wannabe person. I wanted to just show this. Yes, Donna?
Oh, I had a question. I'll just ask a question. There's not questions in the chat, so I'll just ask a question. So one of the favorite things that when I go whale watching, I'd love to see like the gray whale's footprint. And so I would ask all of you, how do you figure out like where the whale is going to come up? You see the footprint. I know a lot of you have different theories about where the whale will come up. Also, whales have different breathing patterns. So you might talk about like a gray whale. Why don't you talk about like if you see a footprint, where you're going to probably see the whale come up? So I'll ask Dave, Captain Dave.
Okay, well, that's a really good question, Donna. You know, and we probably should have covered this when we were talking about finding whales. You know, really important thing to do when you do spot a whale is to figure out what direction it's moving. And typically they are moving a direction. So you want to mainly just sit there for a minute so you can see what's happening with this animal. Is it moving up the coast or down the coast? Is it heading out to sea? And unless you're sure of the direction because you watched it moving, and seen it take a few breaths, because sometimes they're circling. It's good to just sit there long enough to where you can tell how far that whale's traveling each time it comes up. If you're talking about a gray whale, for example, then their downtime is normally about 4 minutes. And most of the gray whales that we see are going to be close to shore. And that was another thing that I don't think we covered. But if you're looking for a gray whale, you might want to maybe go out towards you could even start at the whistle buoy and kind of head up or down from there. And you don't have to go out all that deep. You probably want to stay in fairly close to shore as you're running up and down the coast. And I don't know if that answered your question, but maybe you had.
Well, you said it,
Yeah.
something that I'm just going to say it's second nature to you or first nature for all you captains, but I've heard you guys talking and you'll say, this is a 3-minute whale. This is a 5-minute whale. Oh, this is an 8-minute whale. And what you're referring to is based on your observations, how long this animal is staying down before he comes up. And then you're kind of mentally drawing a picture of what's going on underwater. You're like, okay, this whale stays under 6 minutes, is moving in this direction. And you'll say he's moving at about 3 knots, 2.5 knots. I mean, every whale's got its own speed and depending on its behavior, right? So
typically the gray whales are going to be around 4 knots. And so you can use that if you know which direction it's moving. Then you can, if you're sure that it's going, let's say down the coast, then you can, start heading down the coast a little bit outside of it, and running at about 4 knots. That will give you a good, you should end up close enough to see him the next time he comes up. And
so Donna asked a great question. What does it mean when I see this footprint, which is really not a footprint, but it's this clear pool? It's like all of a sudden it's this very smooth area in the water. It almost looks like a slick, but there's no oil. What does that mean?
Do you want me to? Somebody else can take it, because
Peter, what does that mean when I see that?
Sure, that's a disturbance of the water of a creature of some sort that's barely below, not breaking the surface, so you don't see any splashing, but it just kind of stirs that water up a little bit. So going back to Donna's earlier question, when I see a footprint, that's one data point that I have. Now the question is, where's the second point going to be? And it can be anywhere in 360 degrees around me. So I look around, when I see the second one, then I draw a line between the first and the second, and I say, aha, that's the direction it's going. And I remember from 4th grade that distance equals rate times time. And so if I know how long the time is between the blows, as Dave was saying, then I can figure out about how much further up or down along that track this creature's going, and I can follow it. Like Todd was saying also earlier, being off to the side a little bit and not directly behind it. but I can get a pretty good idea tracking where this thing's going to come up, and if every 3 or 4 minutes or whatever this particular creature is doing. And it's pretty reliable and easy, particularly when you're out there by yourself and there's not a lot of other boats around making noise and coming and going. So these creatures, when they're migrating, or some of the other whales transiting that are not migrating, but we have seen the humpbacks and the blue whales, for example, maybe going from Oceanside to Newport because there's a better feeding ground. They're not going all the way to Alaska. But the same thing works and applies with the footprints, because they leave that footprint when they're below, just before or just after they're going to breathe. And that's how you can track them.
Got it. There's 2 other things, and because we're running short on time, I'm going to just jump in and say that there are 2 other senses that can be used when you're out there, and one of them is your nose. If you aren't seeing anything, take a big deep breath and then look up. If you smell fish, look upwind, because there's probably an animal that you are downwind of, and it just exhaled and you're smelling its fishy breath. And then the other thing that you can use are your ears. If you're out there, you could put your boat, on idle. If you're just sitting there, I've seen, in fact, this minke whale right here, I just happened to go out. I had packed a muffin and I hung out. I was just hanging out. There was nothing out there, and I shut the boat off. And then I heard a blow, and it was like, okay, there's something around here. Where is it? So that's another way that you can do it, particularly if you're in, like some kind of overcastness or something, you don't have great visibility. So you can use both of those senses. I want to be sensitive to the time. If anybody has any questions and you haven't put it in the chat, feel free to do that. And then guys, is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap it up?
I've got something that we have forgotten to mention, and this is very important. And I think Dave and Peter are going to agree with me. One of the things that I see people doing when they're following whales and they're not experienced with it is they think they just leave the boat in gear and they just drive. Guys, you got to remember that when you're following these whales and they're moving much slower than your boat will go with both engines in gear, that you have to be maneuvering in and out of gear, forward, neutral, wait, forward, neutral. Don't just put it in gear and assume that this whale is going to be going faster than you. These whales move very slowly, and then when they make descending dives, the distance that they travel is a little bit shorter than when they're up on the surface. So in and out of gear until you get a perfect pace with that whale's speed. You'll start to learn how fast that whale's traveling, the behavior in and out of gear. It will always keep you behind the whale and not over in front of it where you're disturbing this whale in its path.
Very, very good point.
Yeah.
And once again, if you come up to somebody, a professional whale watching person who's watching the whales, that's where if you just stay behind the last boat there, then you're not going to do anything wrong. What always happens is that if there's a group of boats, what almost always happens is one of the people in the group thinks that he is entitled to get a better look at the whales. And that's another way to really irritate everybody there, and including the whale, is to think that it's okay for you to get a better look than everybody else who's there. And it's just not, it's not nice. So just try to stay where you're behind everybody. And then if the whale could still slow down and end up right next to you, you just don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know where it is either. You'll see us sometimes stop the boat because we're not sure if we haven't seen the whale for a cycle. And so we might stop the boat just to make sure that the whale's not behind us now. And so what Todd's saying is really smart.
Yeah.
If you leave your boat in gear and you just keep going, then you're eventually probably going to drive over that whale, and you'll hear things coming from the boats behind you. Usually it won't be us because we're older and we've learned not to yell at people anymore, but somebody oftentimes will, and you'll be embarrassed, and you don't want to do that. So hang back. Nobody, I mean, most people don't want to run a whale over. But if they get excited and they just want to go and get a better look, just be patient and you will get a better look if you just be patient. Because like Todd said, we're not going to be there that long.
None of us are here that long, but we
Wait your turn.
definitely want to share these animals. We really appreciate everyone who does want to get out there and do it safely. And thank you for being here and taking part. Any last questions, Donna, that we didn't answer?
No, just the little questions from me, and
Okay.
we're all
Awesome.
good.
Well, I think we did a great job. Thank you, Captain Todd. Thank you, Captain Peter. And thank you, Captain Dave.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Donna. All right. You guys have
Thank
a
you,
good
and
good
thank
one.
you, Giselle, for
You're
wonderful
welcome.
Yes.
moderating.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
See
for
you out
having us.
there. Happy
Okay, we'll see you
Festival of
out there.
Whales.